name is Emmanuel Neisa. I'm directing a pedagogical agency based in Colombia that's called Click. And what we do is we design educational materials and educational contents to help adults and kids open up difficult conversations about difficult topics, including armed conflicts, citizenship, environmental things, migration, sexual education, and we provide school systems with materials that allow those conversations to open up, and while mixing entertainment and education. We feel that education has to be engaging, that kids who are educating themselves should be enjoying themselves as well. So we try to blur this line between entertainment and education, making it profound, but at the same time fun. As for the education in emergency, I don't conceive education in emergency much more different than other types of education. I feel that whenever we are in an emergency or not, we still need to think, to reflect, to have fun, to learn how to read, to know maths. So I feel that this education in emergency field is somehow narrowing what the experience of education should be. Of course, there should be a social-emotional focus when we're talking about kids who have been displaced, who lost their homes, who are living difficult situations. But somehow we tend to forget in those type of interventions in education in emergency that those kids will compete with the other ones, and that we need to provide them with the full package somehow. So I've been working for 10 years in education, for 5 years in education in emergencies, dealing with the Venezuelan migration in Colombia, and how to provide those kids with education strategies to be able to cope up with the situation of them being left out of school systems, and on the COVID pandemic emergency, on how to provide school systems with strategies to be able to continue learning despite kids not being able to go to school. Educating for peace is educating for difference, is educating for being able to deal with difference. I guess that peace comes with that idea that we need to live among people who think differently, and to share a same space, to share ideas with people that we are not that we are not aligned with. With this education for peace thing, I think that the most important part also deals with the idea of imagining that the other is something else that what we think he is, that the other is much more complex than what we see. And that guy that we can consider as our enemy, for example, is also a football player, is also a family member, is also he likes nature, or that he's much more complex than what we think. And I think that peace education comes with that idea of understanding complexity, and understanding that people are many things, and that we do not reduce people to one idea, or to one political party, or to one group. And so that idea of complexity, I think that is paramount to think about peace education. I guess I guess that the use of fiction and the use of imaginary words can be very uh, important to teach peace and to understand peace, because many times when we talk about reality only, and we talk about, and we name people, and we name, for example, in a country like Colombia, and you name armed groups, you name politicians, and you name reality in a direct way, many times it's difficult for you to open up yourself to something else, and to understanding that that other person is something else than that a guerrilla member, for example. So I guess that's the importance of literature, of fiction, of art is important, because that allows us to understand the other in a more complex way, and to not being confronting that idea that we have of the other, but but allow us just to go and wander around situations, ideas, characters, without that prevention, without the stigmas that we have in real life. Education is always the leftover when we're talking about emergencies. We always consider that shelters, food are always more important, and of course they are. But when we're talking about people that are homeless, that have no shelter, the only thing that they have is themselves, and the only thing that can build someone and that can provide them with the necessary internal shelter and the necessary power to be able to walk through all these difficulties is education. So the only way to see a long-term intervention when we're talking about humanitarian affairs is to bring education on the table. This and an education that do not waste people's time. People, when they are facing an emergency, when they're being displaced, have very few time and energy to put in this type of things. So the most important thing is to be able to create education strategies that are meaningful, that people feel that are useful for them, and that are engaging. So the most difficult part is that, and many people tend to forget that if you do not solve the micro part, that is of an education strategy, that is how people learn, how people get engaged, how people find it useful, then you're unable to scale an intervention, to scale up an intervention. So the thing that seems the less important, that is how people learn, for example, in this whole part of a humanitarian intervention, becomes the paramount part for us, because this is the thing that makes it very useful for them. I guess that all groups are important. When we are talking about education, it's always better, and research says that it's always better to start as young as possible. So this should be a main priority, is do not forget kids under the age of 5. That is where, like, you get your brain, all the main links within your brain are done during that time. So this is a very important part. But then I guess that even if you're an adult, you learning doesn't have to stop, never. So the important thing is to be able to, yeah, to get to reach everyone, and somehow not being segregating people by their ages, and being able to create learning universes where people from different ages can come up together and talk and learn from each other and create a community. So this is one of the main challenges, I think. Is to stop segregating and to allow people, even if they are of different ages, to be able to get together and to think together, to work together. And their kids are very important, because they are always very refreshing with their ideas, with their ways of seeing the world. And I think that's the older someone becomes, the narrow he sees the world in a narrow way. So I guess that the kids are always bringing imagination, creativity, and new ideas on the table. And that's why it's always important to make them work together with adults. Peace education is the one thing that makes all projects sustainable. We are, as human species, we are, the fate of the human species is to live among difference. And the main challenge that we are having and that we will have is how do we bring solutions among people who think very different. And peace education is about the ability to work together, to planify together, to being able to take everyone into account when we are creating a solution, when we're creating a political program. And I guess that there's no possibility of building a better country, a better community, a better village, if we are unable to work among difference. And peace education is the thing that allow us to collaborate among people, among different people, and to bring the best out of each other, and uh, to allow any project to take the main skills of everyone and to make something that is useful for everybody. I guess that the role that technology has taken in education in emergencies is increasing. Even if all technologies like radio are having a rebirth now with the pandemic, I guess that digital media, cell phones can be very useful. I guess that we are still at the infancy of understanding how technology can help education and humanitarian interventions. Many times we feel that the technology is brought to those projects by the sake of the technology itself, but not in a user-centered way. I guess that there's a big challenge on how do we use this technology to be able to solve uh, problems, real life problems of people, and not by the sake of technology. That's what we are seeing. That if a project works with cell phones, so it's an innovation project, but many times there's nothing happening behind the cell phone. So the contents of education, the strategies need to understand well what's happening there. And so that I guess that's the main challenge that we will face on merging these technology and humanitarian sectors. That's so. Guess that's what I said before, and it's when you're planning a humanitarian intervention and when you're planning to give someone a book, a radio program, a methodology, a training, if you as a person don't find it useful for yourself, or you find it boring, or you're finding meaningless, how will you impose it on someone else's family or on someone else? I guess that there's this little thing, and it's a very simple thing, that is, don't do for the others what you won't do for yourself and your family. So if you, anytime before giving an education strategy to someone else, do it yourself, do it with your nephews, do it with your kids. And if you don't enjoy doing it, why would you think that someone else would enjoy it? And so this is something very simple, but I guess that if anyone who would take large scale decisions would take it like this, I guess that the whole education sector, the whole humanitarian sector would be very different.